evening, and welcome to another edition of the Wright Experience. This is actually the 112th episode of the show. We are fast approaching our third anniversary. I'm Dr. William T. Wright Jr., the founder and host of this show, and I'm absolutely excited to bring you another night of amazing content as we continue our author series. We are now fastly approaching our fourth book, fifth author, because we had two the first night, and very excited to have this gentleman aboard tonight. He has done some amazing things in his career and is now transitioning into the world of college administration and some motivational speaking, a little bit of everything. We're going to give him the opportunity to come and talk with you tonight and let you know all about him. My guest tonight is Dr. Mark James. Dr. James is an amazing administrator that has served for many, many years throughout the United States in different roles. And so at this time, I'd like to welcome to the Wright Experience, Dr. Mark James. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Good to have you. So, Dr. James, for our audience that is not quite as familiar with you as I am, just talk to us a little bit about your career and the things you've done, and then we'll talk about this amazing book that I've had an opportunity to read some excerpts from now. But just start out telling us about you and what you're currently doing as well.
Thank you. Again, my name is Dr. Mark James. I am from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My career really started in servicing youth from the Boys and Girls Club, being a Boys and Girls Club director, to also being a teacher, a reading teacher in a middle school, then to the high school, then transitioned into a behavior specialist administrative role. And then I decided to take the talents, to collegiate football. And, I coached football for 20 plus years. Had an opportunity to be in the lives of a lot of men, a lot of young men, good young men, see them develop. I have three sons myself and a beautiful wife. But my career now, during COVID, I made a decision to kind of pivot and do some of the things that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to write. I always wanted to speak about the experiences and share my experiences that I think that will have some valuable gems to other young people coming up, and not only young people, be a resource to society in general, especially those that have come up around or have interest in athletics. So
Okay.
basically, I'm an educator. People that know me, they call me a bridge builder. I like to consider myself as a coach, no matter how the title changes, because a coach's duty is to take somebody from one direction to or one place to the other that they can't necessarily take themselves. So that's where I cut my teeth, and that's where I believe my station is.
Wonderful. And I did a little research on you, went on the website and everything. You're doing some motivational speaking as well, I think I saw, and just imparting into the lives of people all across the nation. So certainly you're to be commended for those efforts. Talk to us a little bit about the journey through matriculating from coaching to administration. What are the similarities? What are some of the differences?
Well, one of the main reasons why I made that decision during COVID to make a transition was I saw a lot of the challenges that coaches were having, uh,
Hmm.
particularly African American coaches were having in being able to move up in levels, be able to move up in bigger schools. I saw the politics. I saw, the NLI wave coming ahead of time. And I just felt like it was time to be able to move to the other side of it, of advocacy, student athlete advocacy, of coaching advocacy, and be able to share my experiences, whether it was the great ones or the traumatic experiences that made me who I am, to other young coaches or other student athletes coming through the system. So my transition, I believe, was a natural course for me, based on how I felt about athletics. I wanted to get into the point where I could influence athletics at a greater exponential role. Rather than being a coach on one team, I have the opportunity to move around and speak to different people. different teams and be able to be effective in that manner.
And have you seen have you seen, I know that you mentioned NIL a little bit and some of um, the political parts of it. Um, would you say though that the profession is still navigatable with the right people in place, or is it becoming tough like K-12 education, for instance, is these days?
Right. I believe that once you expose the Pandora's box that always deals with economics,
Yeah.
you're only going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. It's just like in K-12 education. Everybody wants change, but there's continual cuts in education, the funding of education. So whenever you have a situation where student athletes are making millions and millions of dollars or making more than the coaches that coach them, you kind of have a forefront of sight of the old bully in the sandbox from when we were kids, that sometimes the bigger you get with your ego, the harder it is for you to be around people and create teams. And what you're seeing is a lot of shifting in coaching because a lot of people can't manage and navigate teams anymore
Uh-huh.
because of NIL. You know, the largest move was Nick Saban just deciding to retire. You know, and everybody thought he would probably coach for another 5 to 7 years. But even though he hasn't naturally admitted that NIL was a rationale, being able to deal with NIL has become um, has become almost like a weight on college coaches with trying to navigate the process, which makes it hard to recruit.
Yeah. Yeah, Dion's doing pretty well, but everybody else is struggling, huh?
Well,
Yeah,
well, Dion, like I said in the book, and I mentioned Deion Sanders in the book.
right.
Dion is a brand, right?
That's
So
right.
a brand is translated into a commodity, and
That's right.
commodities are commodities. You know, you got liabilities and commodities. That's the business world.
Yeah.
And the brand of Prime, he's lending that to whether he lended it to Jackson State, and now he's lending it to Colorado.
Mhm.
They made in the first two home games, they made back the salary of all the coaches on the staff just in concessions and
Wow.
tickets sold for all
Wow.
of his staff members to pay them out for their contract. So he
Wow.
was a valuable commodity for them.
Wow. So speaking of navigation a little bit, let's say we've got listeners that have aspiring college athletes. Um, you dealt with this for years. Game has changed somewhat, I'm sure, but if mama's making a decision about where kids should go to pursue their college pursuits, athletically, academically, what are some things that you think are important to make sure that parents know?
The first and foremost thing with the way athletics are going is that students have to lead with their academics.
Okay. Okay.
Because what's naturally happening, Dr. Wright, is that you're dealing in a situation where you've got the top 250 players in the nation. Those top 250 players in the nation are student athletes. In football, I'm dealing with. In basketball is worse, in baseball is worse than that. But in football, those are the ones that are guaranteed being able to sign on signing day. Then there'll be another 100 to 300 students that have fallen through the crack that might not be the top 250, but might be 1 to 3 stars that'll be able to sign on signing day. What is
Hmm.
happening in the NIL market is that big colleges don't want freshmen. They don't want to develop freshman student athletes because
Oh.
NIL market, you just buy what you need. If you need a quarterback, as the coach said from the SEC during the season, the average quarterback costs you $1.5 million. So what is happening is the whole trend of developing players is not anymore. So I would advise parents of the average student athlete, lead with academics, because
Oh.
what schools or programs are doing is they're telling the freshman students, listen, come on in, we'll give you an academic package. You could earn the right to be able to possibly get a scholarship in your sophomore through junior and senior year. But a lot of high school freshmen are walking on at higher levels right now than ever before. And a lot of D2 programs FCS 1AA and D3 are getting more higher level athletic kids because those kids are going to those levels so they can play to get film and be able to move up later.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So the game has changed tremendously then, because you couldn't hardly get people to go to those schools before, but it's about getting some film so you can get paid.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So let's talk about the book, and then I'm gonna jump back to a couple of other things. But let's talk about the book. What inspired you to write it? Tell us about it. Tell us what we can expect to read in it. I want to hear from your perspective. Like I said, I've read enough to know where it's going for sure, but I want you to talk to us about it.
So the book to me is a gathering of almost 20 years of experience of trying to climb up in the world of football, from from little league coach, high school coach, high school head coach, college head coach, um, experience internships with the NFL, the Chargers, to going and coaching a team in China, Shenzhen, China, being in all the NFL programs, externships, to be able to invest in leadership. I did all of those, right? But still, there's a reality. The reality is do billionaires want to hire black faces to lead their teams? Fortunately, what we're seeing a lot more of that level of leadership and shift on the professional level. On the collegiate level, will continue to struggle. The other layer of the rationale of the book is the historical systemic struggle of the athlete. The book is called 50 Years of Silence. And what I mean in 50 Years of Silence, in the 70s, we had Kareem, we had Jim Brown, we had brothers and sisters, Alethea Gibson. We had brothers and sisters that stood for something. And most of the times in the 60s and 70s, your athletes were the leaders in communities. When they stood up and said something, they moved communities. In the civil rights movement, the athletes played a pivotal role. 1968 Olympics in Mexico, the fist going in the air, the signal of the revolution. And what I wanted to show in the book was that for 50 years we've been silent. So you might say, what caused the silence? For 50 years we have become renters and no longer buyers. So we're renters because we accepted the larger locker rooms, the nicer buildings, the nicer facilities, the playing on national TV. We accepted those things as the greater. And then when I said we, I'm talking about black student athletes.
Right.
We abandoned HBCUs, which were our homestead, to a point that right now, in the census 2023, only 9% of Black America go to HBCUs, which is an amazing number if you really think about it. And I'm speaking about 9% of college age between 18 and 24 go to HBCUs. So HBCUs went from the primary choice to the secondary choice. And HBCUs have suffered just like it's always trickled down like Reaganomics, right? It trickled all the way down to the point we got HBCUs that are closing, that have closed, such as St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia. So the book is it takes a knee to take a stand. And, Kaepernick is on the cover of the book, um, to bring back the voice to the athlete, the black student athlete. LeBron James brought back a voice. Kaepernick brought back a voice. And not being scared because of the lofty contracts that they have, because taking a voice, because they pay you doesn't mean they owe you. So the book does a comparison to a plantation system versus a professional athletic system where there's comparisons and parallels.
So does NIL, is that going to help that, or?
Well, here's the problem. If I give you $1 million, but I don't give you $1,000 worth of financial literacy and empowerment, you're going to spend your money back with my friends anyway. So You
Okay.
know, when you buy that Lamborghini, who you think takes you to the Lamborghini shop? When you get the real estate agent, you're getting the real estate agent from the owner of that team or that franchise, right? So the money is not trickling down to the back to the black community. So I could pay you these lofty contracts because I know that you're going to make economic decisions because you know you don't have the training. So let's take an example. um Deion Sanders' kids have become social media phenoms,
Hmm.
and they've become social media phenoms because they're flashy. They're showing the new things. I mean, 2 weeks ago they bought Deion Sanders a brand new mansion. This week, his son Shador bought him a brand new 2024 Lamborghini SUV. Right. So when you see these things economically, the needle is greater that we're seeing some shearings of the financial gains and wealth because the NCAA before that was a $1 billion plantation that took these monies and black and brown skins paid the price, sweating on the field, risking their lives to be able to do that. So now, while we are now reaping some of the benefits, we have to remember without training causes failure. And because they do not have financial training, failure is imminent. So what we're going to see is we're going to see a rise in the amount of student athletes that get themselves in problems. We might even see a rise of mental health issues that, in college you might make $2 million off an NIL, but you might not get drafted and your career might be over then. But
Hmm.
you're treating the $2 million like a down payment on the house because you believe you're going to have a long career. So there's so many things that have to be addressed that historically have shown us that it's not that simple. Throwing money at it doesn't necessarily solve it. It gives resources, but it doesn't necessarily solve the issue.
And so I also hear you talking about the need for mentoring of kids, even in this richness or this money that they're receiving, teaching them financial literacy, making good decisions, buying stuff that you can own and not drive all the miles up on, and that's still good old common sense. Whether I'm $1 million a year college athlete or whether I'm having to eat in the calf every day, that's what I really hear you saying. So how do we fix that? How do we get those education pieces going? I know you do some of that. I'm sure in the line of work that you're into, but how do we reach, let's say, a 13-year-old who has been playing AAU and mama said to him, you're gonna be the next LeBron or Michael Jordan or Michael Vick or whomever, and uh, we want that child to be successful, but we also want to make sure that the totality of what they need is explained and given and that kind of thing. So how do we do that?
I think we got to be honest, right?
Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay.
so the first, I'm going to start on the outskirts of your question. So, first of all, public opinion in the black and brown world. Let's take the Venus sisters.
Yeah.
Their dad worked them and worked them to be great. There was no choice of whether they were going to be great.
Wasn't a shortcut either, right?
Absolutely. In the
Yeah.
court of public opinion, though, you saw in the movie, people had different views. People said, "Oh, he worked them too hard. He was like a driver of them, a slave driver." Blah 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 blah. So, and then you also look at some of the parents that invest in their children to do these things and be great, and then they live their life vicariously through the kids. Here's the main problem in the situation. The main problem is that financial literacy and empowerment does not happen in college.
Uh-huh.
The mistake that we make is that we are not teaching our students financial literacy in middle school and in high school.
Right.
In
Right.
K-12 education, where we say we're duly sending kids to college, the military, or go work. Why would it be that we wouldn't really make that mandatory as a part of everybody's graduating to be able to have some basic levels of financial literacy? Some people don't even know how to open up an account.
Yeah.
So you've got like a trifold situation. You got parents trying to make money off their sons or daughters' sweat, blood, and tears. So in a way, and I know some people that might be listening might be like, wow, he's too serious about this. But there's a book that's called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And in the
Okay.
by a brother named Paulo Freire. And in that book, it speaks about 360 degrees of oppression. And the best oppressors become the people that are oppressed. And we can oppress our own children to appease our goals, whether it be financially or lofty as aesthetic goals. We can become those oppressors. And what ends up happening to a lot of these student athletes right now, they become so burned out with the pressures to be able to make it. Because see, now it's not about getting a D1 scholarship. You've got student
Mhm.
athletes out there deciding not to sign with anybody and just kind of be a free agent from year to year and concentrate more of the ability to be able to sign an NIL deal. So the game has truly changed. And the final part of the question I wanted to answer is parents need to be educated.
Okay. Okay.
You know, coaches need to be educated in the high school levels. Literally, the most damage to student athletes happens in Little League. The loss of athletic values, the loss of being ethically right as a student athlete, it happens in Little League. And
Mhm.
we give our kids to Little League programs every year. And as a former high school head coach, I used to receive these kids that were broken, that
Uh,
had a fixed methodology and thought process of what being an athlete or a team member was. So, yeah, I believe that the process really starts at home first, then it's in the school, in the middle schools, and the high schools with the training of financial literacy.
Beautiful. And I'm sitting here thinking about a couple of things. First of all, you talked about financial literacy and the fact that it needs to start early, because everybody doesn't have a William Wright Sr. who put me in the car as a, I don't know, 10, 11-year old and said, son, this you're going to ride with me today and learn how to pay bills. This is what grown-ups do. But short of that, you're right. We've got to build those things into and teach coaches. I hadn't thought about that, but somebody who understands the game has got to get to these little league coaches and the AAU folks and whomever to yeah, because it's amazing now. For all these years, there weren't the $1 million and $2 million contracts, and then all of a sudden we started talking about paying players, and it's almost like we overdid it. Now, instead of giving them, tuition or whatever, enough money to get a Toyota, we're paying folks enough money to buy Lambos and things of that nature, which is kind of fixing it, over fixing it, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's the scary part, because it's difficult to educate someone on doing it the right way when that person can turn around and say to you, well, I can get an NIL contract um, and Dr. Wright, I'll be making more than you making 10 years, next year. So and so we've got to appreciate that lesson on how to do a little better job of educating. Um, so talk to us about the future. I know you got some book stuff coming up, and talk about your future and maybe where you also see the future of this athletic work that we're talking about.
So, yeah, what I just want to continue to get deeper into this research
Okay.
that deals with, first of all, the overarching portion of, you know, wearing the skin that's black and brown and
Sure.
understand within all aspects of life. Then, I dig deeper with athletics, being black and brown in athletics, and understanding the how to navigate through athletics.
Yeah.
And I've always, my specialty is always working with young men. And the next piece that I'm writing is going to be dealing with young black men, you
Okay.
know. And the piece, is going to be more of called, dealing with the Walking Dead. Where do black men lay their head? And in America, and it's basically dealing off of research that I went to Uganda this past summer and had an
Okay.
opportunity to speak to tribal leaders, people at universities, um,
All right.
about how they handle family and how they train their men and how they have rites of passage and what they think about us, what through their lens, how do they feel about us? And the book is basically going to be a self-reflection through my life, through what I saw, to how do we develop better black and brown men,
Hmm.
that have a clearer understanding that they're more than an athlete, they're more than a rapper, they're more than things that people think they should be. I'm a big guy. Most people that see me, the first thing they say is, did you play football? They don't take the time to be able to get into my mind to find out, what level of research do you like?
Hmm.
What have you done? How many lives were you able to impact and change? They want to speak about the football game, and that's why we got to be careful, because that's no different than slavery. In slavery, they pit us to wrestle against each other, and that was a pastime.
Yeah.
Abusing us was a pastime. And, hanging us was a pastime. So we can't forget about that. And we have to be able to educate one another and grow one another. And that's where the next piece is going. Is like, it's nobody's responsibility but ours.
Right.
When we hear about black on black crime, and we hear about violence, and we see these things, and we act, oh my God, I'm glad it didn't happen in my neighborhood. Well, it doesn't really hit you until it hits home. I've been at a lot of funerals of people that I've worked for, young
Hmm.
people that I raised through the game of football. I've been to those funerals. I understand the pain of the loss of a family. So I'm going to really get a little bit deep about our relationship. How do black men feel about each other? Why do we have to walk past each other and look each other up and down and not talk? There's simple things that we've been taught to do. Men don't cry. I was raised up with that. Don't cry. All of these are things that we have done that help to perpetuate the destruction of black males. And the book will echo that and speak about how we need to create natural tools of our ancestry to be able to save the future of young black men.
Okay. All right. Sounds like we got a lot to look forward to for sure. There, looking for any inkling of a release date. When can we be looking for that?
June 1st.
June. Okay. All right. So right around the corner then. Okay. Very good. So talk to us a little bit about how we can get the first book. Is it where is it available? Let's ask the question that way.
The book is
I
available.
got mine at the family reunion, but that's not where everybody can get them at.
Absolutely, absolutely. The book is available on Amazon.
Okay.
It's
All right.
called 50 Years of Silence,
Okay.
Commodities versus Liabilities. It
Okay.
makes for a great read of people that might be, you know, really professional coaches, student athletes, or just people that like sports and want to go deeper about the history of African Americans in sports in this country. It is a book that's an easy read. It does have some parts in it that take deep dives into the whys and from a historical perspective, but gives a current relative tone to where we are going and what we need to do.
And a very well articulated um, piece of literature. It's not a you didn't you use some big folks words in that book. I'll put it that way. That are refreshing to hear when, uh, especially when dealing with that subject matter. I think it's amazing, and I do highly recommend it to our reading audience to be a part of it. Uh, Dr. James, lastly, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our audience that might be of use to us?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate Dr. Ryder coming on your show. I think
Absolutely.
that the last thing that I want to say is to everyone, invoke within your own spirit what you believe.
All right.
The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So every man has to, and woman has to invoke within their spirit the what it is that they want to do in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a crossroads in careers and made a decision and never looked back. I think oftentimes people never reach their goals because they're in fear of failure. Last thing I want to say is don't be afraid to fail.
Wonderful.
Failure is only a sign or a bookmark of where you're going next. So I just want to encourage all the listeners out there. If you told me 10 years ago that I would have wrote a book, be a dean of a school in a college level, and be able to travel the world and speak to people about what I'm doing, what I think, my experiences, I would have never believed it. But you just follow your dreams, encourage yourself, and don't let anybody sway you away from what you believe in your spirit.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Dr. James, if you'll hold on, we'll come back and close out the show in just a second.
Thank you, sir.
To the Wright Experience audience, thank you once again for being a part of this work that we're doing. As you can see, we're diversifying our portfolio. We're trying to bring you the very best guests that we can bring you, and the content that we believe that you enjoy. And so, as we continue on, a couple of things that I'll ask you to do. Please talk to your friends and your neighbors about the work that we're doing. Get them to join our family, growing family. They can subscribe to YouTube. They can become a part of the Facebook Live audience. But most of all, we want to make sure that we are providing very best content that we can find. My guest next week is Mr. Ashley Wright. Mr. Wright is not related to me. However, he's a good friend of mine, and we have done some work together here and show up at some places here in the Sumter, South Carolina area. He is an entrepreneur. He's a motivational speaker, and we're looking forward to having him aboard next week. So that presentation will actually be on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, and that'll be airing at 7:00 p.m., just like this show did. And so we're looking forward to having him aboard next week, and hope that you will continue to support this content. Dr. James, we've got you back on here. Thank you so much for being a part of this work that we are doing. Thank you for your insight. And we are looking forward to the next episode. Once that book has been completed, we'll have you back on here, and we're looking forward to having you be a part of that show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. And to the Wright Experience audience, good evening.